Nolan Shaw is the big shot on campus that everyone is intimidated by. He's also the guy I've been in love with for a while now. Out of nowhere, a new admirer of his pops out. She bears a striking resemblance to me. When I bring him his water, she beats me to it. When I write him a love letter, she tears it up. Finally, I muster up the courage to be honest with Nolan about my feelings. Only for her to rush over and kick over the candles I prepared for the confession. That's when I finally lose my patience. Just what on earth are you doing? She ignores me and grabs Nolan's arm before saying, I'll be frank with you. I'm actually here on a mission. You and Nolan will end up in a bitter marriage, hurting each other. So the system wants me to stop you two from being together. I don't believe a word she says, thinking that she's just lying to separate us. But at the very next second, I hear her thoughts. Just what on earth did this scumbag do to make the 22-year-old Teresa fall so hopelessly in love with him? I bet she'll be heartbroken if she finds out that in the future, he'll find her boring and end up keeping 18 mistresses on the side. And after the divorce, he'll even make it hard for her to earn a living. She ends up dying of exhaustion too. My body went rigid. Meanwhile, Nolan Shaw, the big shot on campus, narrowed his eyes and shook Mia Shaw's hand off. Don't be ridiculous, he retorted icily. I'd sacrifice my life for Teresa. Why would our relationship ever fall apart? You're lying on purpose to break us up, aren't you? I didn't believe it either. That Nolan, who loved me more than anything else, would fall out of love with me so easily. Last year, out of jealousy, someone had shoved me down the stairs. I fell hard. My head split open, and blood was everywhere. Afraid that my injuries might worsen, he used his connections to find me the best doctor in the city, and he also escorted me to the hospital himself. The blood bank at the hospital was running low. Thus, despite fainting from the sight of blood, Nolan didn't even hesitate to donate his blood to save me. He ended up donating 1,000 cubic centimeters of his blood, and I survived. However, he had to spend 2 weeks in the hospital after that. Even to this day, his health was still frail. He also went all out to get even with the person who pushed me. Since then, no one ever dared to hurt or bully me again. Once I recalled this, my eyes grew wary. I surreptitiously tugged on Nolan's sleeve and said, Don't bother explaining anything to her, Nolan. Come with me to the library. He turned his head. Those affectionate eyes of his settled on me, filled with unmistakable tenderness. Okay. However, Mia grabbed him again. Noel, I know you don't believe I'm from the future, but you don't even like going to the library with her. You always think she's boring, don't you? I'm not like her. Why don't you spend the day with me instead? I've got a racing license, you know. Let's go to the racing track. Caught off guard, I couldn't help but look at Nolan. Is that really how you feel, Nolan? Nolan looked like he'd been exposed, and he subconsciously raised his voice. Don't listen to her crap, Teresa. No matter what you want to do, as long as we're together, I'll always feel happy and not the least bit bored. He turned to Mia. His gaze was cold and sharp. I'm warning you. If you continue to blabber all of this nonsense, I won't go easy on you. He violently shook off Mia's hand, took mine, and started to lead me away. At that moment, Mia abruptly sucked in a breath. It hurts. Nolan and I paused in our tracks and instinctively looked back. Mia had fallen to the ground. She had scraped her knee, and her eyes were brimming with tears. She looked utterly pitiful. At the very next moment, Nolan's gaze hardened. He immediately let go of my hand and crouched down to check on her. Why did you fall? He asked. I froze slightly, and my fingers curled around the emptiness in my palm. It felt like I'd been stabbed in the heart with the finest needle. It stung ever so slightly. Mia threw herself into Nolan's arms and wept. You shook me off way too hard just now, Noel. I fell straight to the ground. My knee hurts so much I can't even walk. I might have said the wrong thing, but you shouldn't be treating a young woman like this. Nolan's eyes flashed with guilt. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. Stop crying. I'll take you to the nurse's office. Mia pouted pitifully. After picking her up in his arms, Nolan looked at me. His dark eyes were filled with even more remorse. I did cause her injury, Tess. Let me take her to the nurse's office first. I'll look for you the moment I'm done, okay? Curled up in his arms, Mia shot me a smug look, but her thoughts told a completely different story. What a scumbag. He keeps saying he doesn't care about me, but the second I get hurt, he worries about me more than anyone else. He's not even married to Teresa yet, and he's already neglecting her this way. Is this what he considers love? The rest of her thoughts were even more shocking. If this is how he acts before they're married, it's no wonder that he only gets worse after marriage. He even used the fact that he saved her life before as an excuse to force her to donate her blood to save his favorite mistress. Her health was already fragile, to begin with. She ended up falling unconscious for 3 days straight after donating her blood, and he was so busy fussing over his mistress that he didn't even check on her. She must have been so heartbroken then. Before my brain could even process the words, my heart was already clenching hard. The pain was spreading through my body. The blood was slowly draining out of my face as well. Nolan and I were the only ones who knew he'd saved my life by donating his blood to me before. Mia was a new transfer student. There was no way she could have found out about it. Did this prove that the future Nolan would really hurt me for the sake of other women? I clenched my trembling fingers, forcing down my wildly surging emotions. Okay, you can take her to the nurse's office. I knew you'd always be kind and considerate of others, Tess. I'll get going then, Nolan said with a faint smile before carrying Mia off. I could still hear her thoughts. I feel so sorry for doing this to Teresa, but it's better to see things clearly before they're married than suffer after, isn't it? With how smart she is, she'll probably break up with him now, right? Either way, once we get to the nurse's office, I'll get the scumbag to reveal his true thoughts to me. That way, I can help Teresa escape her future hell. I stood there for a few seconds before, as if under a spell, I followed them. Through the window, I watched the campus nurse treat Mia's wound before leaving. I also saw Mia leaning toward Nolan. Noel, I know you don't like going to the library. Why not just tell her the truth? Isn't it exhausting to always pretend like that? Nolan's brows furrowed. He warned her, saying, I might not like going to the library, but Teresa is the woman I love. If she wants to go, I'm more than happy to accompany her. You'd better keep your mouth shut and stop bringing up things you shouldn't even be mentioning. Otherwise, I swear I'll come after you. Mia smirked, completely unfazed by his threat. Stop trying to threaten me. I know you better than you can even imagine, okay? You might be devoted to Teresa right now. You might be willing to put up with your own discomfort to be with her. But in the future, you'll find her boring. You'll secretly keep 18 mistresses on the side. They'll get pregnant and start provoking Teresa. They'll slap her and even kick her in the abdomen. While you just stand there and let them do it. Are you sure that when the time comes, you can still claim that she's the woman you love? Nolan was stunned. How is that possible? I would never do anything to hurt Teresa. I'm telling the truth. That's exactly what you're like in the future. I saw it with my own eyes. However, Mia wasn't annoyed that he was doubting her. She handed him her phone saying, this is the live stream to announce the winning lottery numbers. The drawing is in 10 seconds. The numbers for this round are going to be 0, 6, 10, 13, 14, 15, 20, and 11. You'll soon be seeing for yourself whether I'm really from the future or not. To verify it myself, I quickly pulled out my own phone and joined the live stream. Meanwhile, Nolan snorted loudly, as if Mia had just cracked a ridiculous joke. You've got to be kidding me. The winning lottery numbers are randomly generated. How could you possibly know them in advance? He was cut off by the announcement in the live stream. And the numbers were the exact ones Mia just listed out. My eyes widened, and Nolan's voice died out. Shock flooded his face. Mia took her phone back and smiled sweetly at him. You finally believe that I'm from the future, right? To be honest with you, I'm one of your 18 mistresses. If you really only love Teresa, you'd instinctively refuse to have any physical contact with me. But you're not rejecting my proximity at all. Would you believe me if I told you that, in the future, you'll also be hurting Teresa time and time again for my sake? Nolan pressed his lips together, seemingly convinced. It felt as if a knife had been driven straight into my heart. I couldn't listen to this any longer. With my body just barely holding steady, I turned and left. Mia really was from the future. And in that future, Nolan and I would really end up bitter and hateful toward each other. We would torment each other, or rather, it would be a one-sided torment. He would be the one tormenting me. An indescribable emotion filled my heart. I returned to my dorm room, only to meet the mocking gazes of my roommates. One of them, Olivia Reed, remarked, "Look who's back at last. You were reported for plagiarizing Mia Shaw's work in your submission to the National Art Competition. Professor Dorsey wants to see you in her office." It was like a bucket of cold water had been dumped over my head. I snapped out of my heavy emotions in an instant. Me? Accused of plagiarism? Who reported me? Olivia rolled her eyes. As if that matters. Mia published her work ages ago, and you submitted the exact same piece to the competition. Anyone with eyes can tell that you plagiarized her art. My expression was dark. I turned on my heels and headed straight to the office of my faculty advisor, Professor Dorsey. Once I got there, I solemnly explained to her, I didn't plagiarize anyone, Professor Dorsey. Nolan Shaw was with me the whole time I was creating my artwork. He can be my witness. Professor Dorsey rubbed her forehead. I've already notified Mia to come over. When she and Nolan get here, I'll get to the bottom of things. Not long after, Mia walked in. She was eating ice cream. Pulling Nolan along into the office, she said with a cheerful smile, "You wanted to see me, Professor Dorsey?" Professor Dorsey looked at her and said, "I called you here to ask you about a situation. You and Teresa both submitted identical artwork. I want to know which one of you copied the other." Nolan frowned and immediately said, "There's no way Teresa plagiarized anyone. I can testify that she drew her artwork herself." I looked at him, and some of the tension in my heart eased. Even when everyone else was doubting me, he chose to believe me. However, after finally finishing her ice cream, Mia pulled up a website and said pointedly, "You shouldn't slander me just because of your relationship with her, Noel. I published my artwork a month before she submitted hers. Go on. Check the time of publication. I have no beef with her, so there's no reason for me to set her up. I don't care if anyone else doubts me, Noel, but you can't." At the same time, Mia's thoughts rang out again. I feel bad that I have to do this to Teresa. I did plagiarize her artwork. I just hope this makes her understand that no matter how much Nolan loves her right now, he's only drawn in by her talent and not her soul. They'll get married and have a daughter, and she ends up becoming a full-time housewife. Once that happens, she'll get bogged down by the chores of daily life, and he will start having a change of heart. That's when her true suffering will begin. I'll be his mistress in the future, one of the women he carefully chose to keep him company. I know he'll constantly hurt Teresa because of me. My heart jolted. Sure enough, Nolan's expression wavered, and his brows drew together. "Tess, the publication date for Mia's artwork really is earlier than yours. Did you see her work during that week when you were creating your submission?" Nolan questioned me. My expression froze, and my heart clenched painfully. "I didn't. Weren't you with me the entire time when I was working on it?" Nolan pressed his lips together. "I was by your side, but I didn't pay full attention to your creative process. You could have easily won this sort of competition without plagiarizing anyone, Tess. I have full faith in your abilities. Come on then. I'll go to the library with you, and you can come up with a new artwork. There's still time." It sounded like he meant well when, in reality, his words made it a certainty that I was guilty of plagiarism. A spectating crowd had gathered outside Professor Dorsey's office, and they immediately started whispering among themselves. I can't believe the top student of her class would actually plagiarize someone else. How shameless of her. I guess grades don't reflect a person's character after all. Look at her. She makes it seem like she's the one being wronged. Nolan loves her more than anything else in the world. He would even pluck the stars out of the sky for her, and even he admits that she plagiarized Mia's work. So, what does she have to feel bad about? Even Professor Dorsey sighed. "Teresa, I know you're a good student and a smart young woman, but you shouldn't be plagiarizing just to secure the top prize in a competition. I won't put it in your permanent record this time. Just destroy your previous artwork and submit a new one. But remember, this mustn't happen again." Malicious gazes came from all directions, burning into me. My face was pale. I clenched my hands and straightened my back, declaring, "Thank you, Professor Dorsey, but I won't be submitting a new piece of artwork. I never visited the site where Mia posted her artwork. I'll get someone to check all of my browsing history as evidence to prove my innocence. I didn't plagiarize, and I refuse to admit to something I've never done. I won't stop defending myself and clearing my name." As Professor Dorsey looked at me in shock, I turned to Nolan. I would have been fine if anyone else doubted me, but he shouldn't. He knew full well that Mia was from the future. If she could memorize the winning lottery numbers, what was stopping her from remembering my artwork? "Don't ever come near me again, Nolan," I said. His expression stiffened. "You're telling me not to come near you ever again just because I told the truth? It's perfectly normal for people to make mistakes sometimes. It's not like I doubted your talents. I was even willing to accompany you while you made a new piece of artwork, so why are you getting mad at me? Either way, I won't allow it. I refuse to accept this." As I listened to his haughty tone and words, he suddenly seemed like a complete stranger to me. I even felt a little relieved. I was relieved that Mia let me see his true colors sooner rather than later. I hadn't fallen in too deep yet. It wasn't too late. "Come near me again and I'll call the police," I warned him before leaving Professor Dorsey's office. Once I was outside, my emotions started getting the best of me. Nevertheless, I resisted the urge to cry and immediately wiped away any stray tears that fell from my eyes. I wasn't going to show any weakness. I'd gone all the way to the lake when someone patted me on the shoulder. Mia's head popped out from the side, and she flashed me a smug smile. "I told you I'd break you two up eventually. Now you believe me, right?" Mia said. She deliberately tried to make herself seem rude and obnoxious, but for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to hate her at all. "You said you're from the future. Doesn't that mean you know everything about what happens between Nolan and me?" I asked. Mia nodded smugly. "That's right." Since I didn't get to hear her thoughts this time, I broached the subject from a different angle. "You said Nolan and I had a daughter. Since our marriage fell apart, who did our daughter stay with?" Mia's smile stiffened briefly before returning to normal. "You two did have a daughter. After the divorce, custody was granted to Nolan. He didn't really take care of her though. But since the Shaw family is rich, your daughter's needs were all met. Oh, by the way, Nolan will propose to you during the graduation ceremony in 3 days. You two will end up in bed that night, and that's how you get pregnant with your daughter. Because of that, you'll end up getting married young and becoming a full-time housewife. I can't let you two have a child together. The only way for me to fully replace you as his wife is to break you two apart for good." I frowned. I've already cut ties with Nolan. You call that cutting ties with him? You two are madly in love with each other right now. Who knows? Maybe you'll get back together with him within the next couple of days. I'm determined to make sure you give up on him completely, Mia declared. I heard from him that you can't swim, right? Well, if we both fall in the water at the same time, who do you think he'll save first? Mia cackled sinisterly, and before I could fully process her words, she dragged me into the lake with her. I couldn't believe it. Panic surged as I struggled desperately to stay afloat. As my head bobbed in the water, I saw Nolan jump straight into the lake and grab Mia before swimming toward the shore. He really did choose her yet again. I felt suffocated. The lake water flooded my nose. I couldn't breathe. My body slowly began sinking beneath the water. When I finally regained consciousness, it was late at night. 3 whole days had passed. I was lying in a hospital bed, with Nolan sitting beside me. Tess, you're finally awake, he called out hoarsely. You've been sleeping for 3 days now. You scared me to death. I looked at him. He was gazing down at me. The usual arrogance in his demeanor was gone. Right now he looked like a sweet little puppy. I'm sorry. I didn't take good care of you. Mia was closer to the shore, so I saved her first. By the time I jumped back in to save you, you'd already sunk underwater. I was so scared. Thank God you're okay, he said. I'll make it up to you, Tess. Will you marry me? I swear I'll treat you even better from now on. I'll spend my whole life making it up to you. He held up a familiar ring, and his eyes were earnest. A memory surfaced in my head. Some time ago, we walked past a jewelry store together. Jokingly, I'd pointed at a beautiful pink diamond ring in the display window. That's so pretty. If we ever get engaged, I want this ring. At the time, Nolan said nothing. I never thought he'd remember that. Yet here he was, holding that very ring to propose to me. Once again, Mia's words had been proven true. If everything had remained the same, I would have agreed to Nolan's proposal today. I would have gotten pregnant, had a child, and gone down a path of no return. A chill slowly spread through my veins, but my expression remained calm. I'm sorry. I don't want to marry you. I've thought about a lot of things these past few days. Since you'll fall in love with so many women in the future, you can be with them instead. I don't want to be a part of that farce. Nolan's hopeful expression stiffened before anger colored his face. I risked my life to save you, Teresa. Yet you insist on rejecting me because of a stranger's instigation? Aren't you the one who has been constantly abandoning me for a stranger? Don't be such a hypocrite, Nolan, I retorted. Now that I'd humiliated him like that, Nolan scowled. His hand was clenched tightly around the ring. Fine, Teresa. You'll regret not marrying me. He stormed out of the hospital room and ran straight into Mia, but he didn't slow down at all. Mia glanced at him before walking into the hospital room with a smile. She sat down on the chair. I looked at her, and my pale lips curved up slightly. Aren't you in love with Nolan and eager to be with him? I've stepped aside now. If you want him, go after him. Mia gave me a genuine smile. Who'd be interested in that scumbag? I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I raised a brow in surprise. Her eyes crinkled as she grinned at me. We can talk about him later. I've got something important to tell you. Remember that plagiarism scandal? The artwork I uploaded was actually in your name. She tapped on her phone and showed me that my name really was listed as the creator of the artwork. Looking pretty pleased with herself, she declared, "This piece will be the one you're most proud of in the future, and your daughter's favorite too." I looked at her in confusion. Why did you do this? Mia blinked before replying. Because you're a good person and it was your artwork to begin with. All the honor and glory should go to you. I was even more confused now, but she didn't seem inclined to explain any further. Gripping my hand tightly, she continued. You know, in the future, even though many of Nolan's mistresses kept humiliating you, you chose to grit your teeth and put up with it, until one of them hurt your daughter. That was when you lost it. You gave the mistress a good beating, and even ended things with Nolan. Even though it meant leaving the marriage with nothing, you insisted on taking your daughter with you. But you were in frail health the whole time. And to force you into getting back with him, Nolan made it hard for you to earn money. Your only option was doing the most tiring odd jobs that no one else wanted to do, just so you could raise your daughter. You were so silly, you know. With how attractive and intelligent you are, you could have easily had a fresh start if you had chosen to give up on your daughter. But even though it meant working yourself to the bone, not once did you think about letting go of her. You did a great job raising her. She became an upright citizen, and even a great contributor to the nation. The more I heard, the more puzzled I became. Didn't you tell me before that Nolan got custody of our daughter? Mia froze and didn't speak. My heart trembled as an inconceivable possibility occurred to me. Are you my daughter? Mia's eyes filled with tears. After glancing at the time, she suddenly threw herself into my arms. Her smile was bright and earnest. Teresa, that scumbag can't hurt you anymore. In this life, you'll finally be free to pursue your dreams. I have faith in you. I know you'll become the best designer to ever exist. She kissed my face. Her eyes were wet, and her smile never faded. I love you, Teresa. I love you the most in this entire world. This time around, live a happy, healthy life. And if there's ever a chance, I hope we'll meet again. The moment she finished speaking, the clock struck midnight. Her body began to turn transparent. No, Mia. I lunged forward, my fingers desperately grasping at the air, but there was nothing left to hold. Mia's body dissolved into thousands of shimmering motes of light, drifting upward like embers from a dying fire before vanishing completely into the sterile hospital room air. Mia. The scream tore from my throat, raw and agonizing. I fell onto the linoleum floor, my knees hitting the hard surface with a heavy thud, my hands scrambling over the empty space where she had just been sitting. There was no warmth, no trace of her bright, earnest smile, just the faint, lingering scent of the strawberry ice cream she had been eating earlier that day. Are you my daughter? Because you're a good person. All the honor and glory should go to you. The weight of her words crashed into me, suffocating me. I curled into myself on the cold floor, sobbing so hard my ribs ached. She was my daughter, the child I would have birthed in a timeline of misery and despair. A child who had watched her mother waste away, battered by a toxic marriage, working odd jobs with a frail body just to keep a roof over her head. A child who loved me so fiercely that she had somehow clawed her way back through the fabric of time to stop her own conception. If Nolan and I never got married, if I never got pregnant on graduation night, Mia would cease to exist. She knew. She knew from the very beginning that by breaking us up, she was signing her own death warrant. She had deliberately played the villain, played the mistress, intentionally throwing herself into Nolan's arms just to shatter my illusions. She had let him save her from the lake so I would see his true priorities. Every obnoxious smile, every smug remark, it was all a meticulously crafted performance by a daughter desperate to save her mother from hell. And I hadn't even recognized her. The door to my room suddenly slammed open. A nurse rushed in, her eyes wide with alarm. Miss, are you all right? I heard screaming. I looked up, my vision blurred with tears. Where is she? I choked out, grabbing the nurse's scrubs. The girl who was just here. Mia. Where did she go? The nurse frowned, gently prying my fingers away. Miss, you've been alone in here since your boyfriend stormed out 10 minutes ago. There was no one else. My breath hitched. No, she was right here. She was sitting in that chair. I've been at the station down the hall the whole time, the nurse said softly, her voice taking on that pitying tone reserved for the delirious. Nobody came in. Let me help you back into bed. Your oxygen levels are probably just a bit low from the drowning incident. I let her guide me back to the bed, my mind racing. Mia had erased herself. Not just from the future, but from the very timeline. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone from the bedside table and navigated to the art forum where the plagiarism scandal had started. My heart pounded against my ribs. I found the post Mia had shown me. There was my artwork. But the name attached to the profile wasn't Mia Shaw. It was Teresa. My account. My digital footprint. She had left me a parting gift. She had completely scrubbed her own existence from the digital world, replacing the narrative to ensure my reputation remained flawless. I clutched the phone to my chest, closing my eyes as fresh tears spilled over my cheeks. I promise you, Mia, I whispered into the empty, quiet room. I won't let your sacrifice be for nothing. I will live the life you gave back to me. I was discharged from the hospital the following afternoon. I didn't tell Nolan. I didn't tell anyone. When I returned to campus, the atmosphere was strange. I walked straight to Professor Dorsey's office. I knocked twice and entered. Professor Dorsey looked up, adjusting her glasses. Teresa, I was just about to call you. I owe you a massive apology. I stood straight. You checked the system. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I had the IT department look into the upload logs. The artwork was uploaded from your dorm's IP address, securely under your student ID, over a month ago. I don't know why that glitch occurred where it seemed like it belonged to someone else, but it's undeniable now. The work is yours. You have been entirely cleared of all plagiarism charges. What about Mia Shaw? I asked quietly, testing the waters. Professor Dorsey blinked, a look of genuine confusion crossing her face. Who? The transfer student. The one who claimed I copied her. Professor Dorsey stared at me for a long moment. Teresa, are you feeling all right? Did the drowning affect your memory? There is no transfer student named Mia Shaw in our department. You were accused by an anonymous tip online which we have now proven was baseless. My blood ran cold, but a profound sense of awe settled over me. The universe was correcting itself, because Mia had succeeded in severing the timeline that led to her birth. Her entire presence in the past had been overwritten. To the rest of the world, she was a ghost that never existed. But I remembered. And surprisingly, someone else did too. As I exited the building, a hand violently grabbed my wrist, spinning me around. It was Nolan. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice bordering on hysterical. "Where the hell did you hide her, Teresa?" I yanked my arm out of his grasp, stepping back. "Hide who?" "Mia," he barked, drawing the attention of a few passing students. "I went to the nurse's office. They don't remember her. I went to the registrar. They said, there's no record of a Mia Shaw. You did this, didn't you? You pulled some strings to get her expelled and erased, because you were jealous." I stared at him. The man I had loved for 3 years. The man who had supposedly saved my life by giving me his blood, only to hold it over my head like a loaded gun in our future. Why did he remember her? Was it because his blood was the catalyst for the timeline? Or perhaps the universe left him with the memory of the girl he chose over me as a punishment? "Nolan," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Mia is gone. She's never coming back. Don't give me that bullshit. I know what happened." He stepped closer, trying to use his height to intimidate me, a tactic that used to make me back down and apologize. "She told me you were going to be a nightmare. I didn't believe her. At first. I thought you were sweet, innocent Teresa. But to go this far just to punish a girl I spent one afternoon with? You're insane." I didn't flinch. I just looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the arrogance, the unchecked entitlement, the way he immediately defaulted to blaming me to excuse his own wandering eye. Mia was right. He was drawn to my talent and my quiet obedience, not my soul. The moment I became inconvenient, he would discard me. "You're right," I said flatly. Nolan paused, thrown off by my agreement. "What?" "I am completely different from the girl you thought I was," I told him, looking him dead in the eye. "Because the girl you thought I was would have forgiven you for leaving her to drown. She would have taken that ring and tied herself to a man who would eventually house 18 mistresses and let them beat her child." Nolan's face drained of color. "How? How do you know about that?" "That's what Mia kept babbling about. It's nonsense. It doesn't matter." I cut him off. "We are done, Nolan. Completely, irrevocably done. Do not call me. Do not look for me. If you come near me again, I won't. Just call the police. I will destroy you." I turned on my heel and walked away. For the first time in my life, my steps felt terrifyingly light. I didn't look back, not even when I heard him scream my name in frustration. 3 days later was graduation. The campus was awash in a sea of black robes and mortarboards. I sat among my peers, the national art competition's gold medal heavy around my neck. The award came with a massive cash prize and an invitation to apprentice under a prestigious design firm in Paris. I had already signed the acceptance letter. As the ceremony concluded and students poured onto the lawn to take photos with their families, a sudden hush fell over the crowd near the fountain. I was packing my degree into its protective folder when Olivia, my roommate who had suddenly become awfully quiet since my name was cleared, tapped my shoulder. "Teresa, Nolan is doing something crazy." I looked up. Nolan was standing on the edge of the stone fountain. In his hand was a microphone hooked up to a portable amp, and in the center of the courtyard he had arranged thousands of red roses into a massive heart. "Teresa." His voice boomed over the speakers, echoing off the brick buildings. "I know we've had a rough few days. I know you're confused and I know I made mistakes. But I love you. I saved your life, and I want to spend the rest of mine protecting you." Whispers broke out. Cell phones were raised, recording the spectacle. He jumped down from the fountain and walked toward me, the crowd parting like the Red Sea. He dropped to one knee right in the middle of the roses, pulling out that familiar velvet box. The pink diamond glinted in the afternoon sun. "Marry me, Teresa," he pleaded, looking up at me with those dark, supposedly affectionate eyes. I looked at the ring I had once foolishly pointed out in a window. The ring that was supposed to be the shackle that bound me to a life of misery. "You'll end up getting married young and becoming a full-time housewife," Mia's voice echoed in my mind. I stepped forward. The crowd held its breath, expecting a tearful reconciliation. I looked down at Nolan. "Do you remember the night I fell down the stairs?" I asked softly, so only he could hear. His brow furrowed. "Of course I do. I gave you my blood. I saved you." "Yes," I said. "You did. And I was grateful. I thought it meant you loved me. But true love doesn't keep a ledger, Nolan. You hold that blood over my head, like a debt I owe you. You think it entitles you to my forgiveness, to my life, to my future. Tess, that's not. You saved my life." I interrupted, my voice steady. And now, by walking away from you, I am saving my own. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I simply stepped around the sea of red roses and walked away. The crowd erupted into shocked murmurs, but I didn't care. Nolan remained, kneeling in the dirt, the pink diamond catching the light, entirely useless. The timeline was officially broken. The chain was snapped. That night, instead of ending up in Nolan's bed, I boarded a red-eye flight to Paris. I watched the city lights of my past shrink into nothingness beneath the clouds. I placed a hand over my empty womb, a bittersweet ache blooming in my chest. Watch me, Mia, I whispered to the dark cabin. I'm going to make you proud. The next 5 years were a crucible of blood, sweat, and graphite. Paris did not care about my gold medal, nor did it care about my tragic past. The fashion and design industry was a meat grinder, and as an apprentice, I was at the very bottom. I fetched coffee, pinned fabrics until my fingers bled, and stayed awake for 72 hours straight during fashion weeks. There were nights when the exhaustion was so profound I would collapse onto the hardwood floor of my tiny, unheated apartment and cry. I wanted to give up. I wanted to crawl into a normal, easy life. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mia. I saw her tearing up my love letter. I saw her throwing herself into the lake. I saw her fading into light, smiling through her tears as she told me she loved me. She had sacrificed her existence so I could have this chance. I had absolutely no right to squander it. I poured every ounce of my grief, my love, and my resilience into my art. I began designing a collection in secret. I didn't base it on the current trends of Parisian haute couture. I based it on the concept of time, of broken timelines, of invisible threads connecting mothers and daughters, of futures that never came to pass. I called the collection Echo. When my mentor, a notoriously strict veteran of the industry named Madame Rousseau, accidentally saw my sketches, she didn't scold me for wasting time. She stared at them for a long time, her eyes tracing the intricate, ethereal lines of a gown that looked like it was made of woven light. "Who is this for?" she asked, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Someone I lost," I replied. "Someone who gave me everything." She made Echo the finale of our house's spring showcase. The collection debuted to absolute silence, followed by a standing ovation that lasted a full 10 minutes. The critics called it a transcendent exploration of grief and rebirth. At 27 years old, I went from a nameless apprentice to the most sought-after young designer in Europe. I started my own label. I bought a beautiful apartment overlooking the Seine. I was healthy, having finally had the time and resources to properly nurse my frail constitution back to strength. Through the grapevine of old university classmates, news of Nolan occasionally reached me. Without me to anchor him, Nolan had spiraled exactly as Mia had foreseen. Took over the Shaw family business, but his arrogance and volatile temper drove away their most loyal executives. He married a wealthy heiress for a business merger, but the marriage was a spectacular disaster. Just last month, a tabloid had published a massive expose on him. He was caught juggling multiple mistresses, a scandal that tanked the Shaw company's stock. His wife filed for a brutal, highly publicized divorce. He was bleeding money, isolated, and rapidly losing his grip on his empire. Mia had been entirely right. He was a sinking ship, and he would have dragged me down to the bottom of the ocean with him. I read the article over a cup of espresso, felt a fleeting second of pity for the women involved, and then tossed the magazine into the recycling bin. Belonged to a past I no longer inhabited. It was during a charity gala in New York, celebrating my label's expansion into the American market, that I met him. Elias Vance. He wasn't a big shot who demanded the room's attention. He was an architect, standing quietly by a pillar, observing the chaotic glamour of the gala with a look of mild amusement. We ended up at the same balcony, both escaping the suffocating press of reporters. "You look like you're plotting a grand escape," he remarked, sipping his champagne. I laughed, leaning against the railing. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone plotting the exact same thing," he smiled. His eyes were a warm, crinkling hazel, and his demeanor was incredibly grounding. "I'm Elias. I design the gallery we're currently standing in, which ironically means I know exactly where the service exits are." "Teresa," I said, shaking his hand, "and I would highly appreciate you showing me one of those exits." That night, we walked through the chilly streets of New York, eating cheap pizza slices in our formal wear. It was the easiest, most natural conversation I had ever had. Elias didn't look at me like I was a prize to be won or a fragile bird to be caged. He listened to me. He asked about my art, my inspirations, and my thoughts, and he engaged with them as an equal. We started dating. It was a stark contrast to my relationship with Nolan. There were no volatile arguments, no grand, manipulative gestures, no jealousy. It was a quiet, steady burn. A partnership. When my health occasionally flared up, leaving me fatigued, Elias didn't make me feel guilty. He didn't parade his sacrifices in front of me. He simply brewed me ginger tea, wrapped me in blankets, and read to me until I fell asleep. 2 years later, he proposed. Not in front of a crowd of thousands, not with a gaudy pink diamond, but on the couch in our living room, on a rainy Tuesday evening with a simple vintage gold band. I don't need you to be anything other than exactly who you are, Teresa, he told me, holding my hands. I just want to walk beside you, for as long as we both have. I cried. And I said yes. The opening of my flagship store in Manhattan was the pinnacle of my career. The streets were lined with photographers. A-list celebrities wore my designs on the red carpet. I stood near the entrance, greeting guests, my hand resting instinctively on the slight swell of my stomach. I was 4 months pregnant. Teresa. The voice was raspy, age far beyond its years. I turned. Standing outside the velvet ropes, clutching a crumpled invitation, was Nolan. I almost didn't recognize him. The golden boy arrogance was entirely gone, replaced by a hollow, sunken exhaustion. His suit was expensive but ill-fitting, hanging off his thinning frame. The years of stress, lawsuits, and toxic living had chewed him up and spat him out. The security guards moved to intercept him, but I raised a hand, signaling them to wait. I walked over to the rope. "Nolan," I said, my voice perfectly neutral. He stared at me, his eyes roaming over my elegant gown, the confident posture I held, the wedding ring on my finger, and finally, the undeniable curve of my pregnancy. A profound, agonizing regret shattered across his face. "You did it," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You really became the best. Just like she said." I went perfectly still. Like who said? A tear slipped down Nolan's weathered cheek. Mia. I never stopped dreaming about her. For years, I thought I was going crazy. But I remember what she told me that day in the nurse's office. She told me I would lose everything. She told me I would be a miserable failure, and that you would become a star. Without me. He choked on a sob, his hands gripping the velvet rope. "I should have treated you better, Tess. I should have." "Don't." I stopped him, my tone firm but lacking any malice. I had no anger left. For him. He was just a tragic footnote in my life. "You made your choices, Nolan. And I made mine. I hope you find peace." I turned my back on him and walked back into the warmth and light of the gallery, leaving him in the cold. 5 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, I was rushed to the hospital. The labor was difficult. My body was still delicate, but Elias never left my side. He held my hand, whispering words of encouragement, grounding me through the worst of the pain. After hours of agonizing effort, the sharp, piercing cry of a newborn filled the delivery room. "It's a girl," the doctor announced with a warm smile, wrapping the tiny infant in a blanket before gently placing her on my chest. I was exhausted, covered in sweat, my vision swimming. But the moment the baby was placed against my skin, the rest of the world faded away. She stopped crying almost instantly. She let out a soft little breath, her tiny fists curling against my collarbone. Elias kissed my forehead, his tears dropping onto my cheek. "She's beautiful, Tess. She's perfect." I looked down at the tiny bundle. Slowly, the baby opened her eyes. My breath caught in my throat. They were bright, observant, and crinkled slightly at the corners, exactly the way I remembered. A familiar warmth radiated from her, washing away the years of lingering grief in my heart. The missing piece of my soul clicked back into place. I brushed my thumb over her soft cheek, a tear escaping my eye and landing on her little nose. She blinked and a tiny, gummy smile formed on her lips. "What should we name her?" Elias whispered, stroking the baby's fine hair. I didn't hesitate. I looked into those bright, familiar eyes, feeling the beautiful, impossible magic of the universe wrapping around us. The timeline was fixed. The hell she had feared was gone. She didn't have to be a soldier in this life. She just got to be my daughter. "Mia," I whispered, pulling her closer to my heart. "Her name is Mia." I kissed her forehead, closing my eyes as a profound, unshakable peace settled over my entire being. "Welcome back, my sweet girl. Welcome home."